season and then go into the competition season later on today. This is the preseason. Like right now, we're in the preseason. And I think the first thing that you all as coaches, that we all as coaches should do is evaluate where our program is at currently. So when I say club versus team, I guess this is a time for you to start here. What is the difference to you between a club and a team? Yeah.
A club normally has more kids.
Yep.
And they can be, a club's more of like a learning time of like they're learning how to build robots, learning how to program, learning how to work together, problem solve. Compared to a team would be smaller, a lot smaller. And the team would then have very specific goals in mind of what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think a club sounds very exclusive. You know, like you want to be a part of this club, you have to do these certain things. And a team is more like, I think a teamwork. We're all got to work together for a goal.
Sure. Anything else? Those are both really good. I think both are fine, honestly, but I think our ultimate goal is to maybe lean towards the team aspect, maybe more organization, some sub-teams. I don't remember if it was you that said it or you, but just the expectations and the goals that you guys had. And so I think the biggest issue that I hear about at competitions when coaches talk to me is, you know, they ask like, how is your team so far? How do the kids know exactly what to do at a competition and throughout the season? And the first question I always ask them is, how many kids do you have? And they say, oh, about 50. I say, oh, how many teams is that? They're like, oh, like 10. I say, how many coaches or how much help do you have? And they're like, well, it's just me and a couple of dads. And that's the problem, right? The biggest problem is that there's not enough help. You have to evaluate your help, you have to evaluate your resources, and your time. And I think the biggest issue is help. And so for me personally, at Woodview Elementary up in Napanee, Indiana, anyone heard of Napanee, Indiana? Amish country, which makes this even more ironic, I guess. I don't have any Amish kids on my team. I wish I could. I think that'd be really cool for the judges to see, but not a lot. And I just evaluated that from the very beginning. I said, I don't have enough help. I know I don't have enough help in my school. So I'm not going to take on 8 teams or 10 teams and get all these free robots and whatnot. I'm only going to do 2 teams based on the resources and the time and the help that I have. Because what ends up happening, and I've talked to way too many coaches, they just feel way too spread thin. They're overwhelmed. And when they're overwhelmed, the kids become overwhelmed. And so we're going to talk about in a little bit, a couple slides, the selection process that I use, pretty common selection process, to whittle it down. And people say, so how do you say no to kids? Like, how do you turn kids away? And that is honestly the hardest thing for the entire season to do, is to say no to kids. And so there are some alternatives as well. Bottom bullet point here, if you don't have enough support, consider running a camp or a league for all interested students. George and I have talked about this a little bit. It's kind of like having a varsity squad and an intramural squad, so that every kid can still have a chance to participate and get their lips wet when it comes to robotics and engineering, but you're still taking teams to across the state to compete and that. So. Yeah, I think before we talk about the selection process, you're going to talk really quickly about the difference between reloading and rebuilding.
So I'm going to try to talk loud enough for you guys. I have done both. In the beginning, 5 years ago, we would rebuild every year. You lose your dynamic of your teams because you don't have those students invested. But when you reload your team, you are taking the team you had the previous season and just adding kids to those spots that have left. So I have 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and I'll show you just a sample down here. This is I want to go to the link that was on there. So I'm going to do this right now. Okay. So what I did, I took a snapshot of my team from last year. We had 2 8th graders, so those are open spots. But I had 8 kids on that team last year. Just heard Jake talk about having too many, being spread too thin. So I am cutting down to 30 kids this year. I can't do it by myself. I can't do only 2 dads, and then those dads only then help their individual kids. So 30 kids, and that's it. So I told them the first day of Monday, if you do not give me your application by August 13th, you're going to watch me put it into the recycling. So they all grabbed an application.
Is this it?
No,
No.
that one, right?
It wants permission for George, but I'm George.
That's it.
Okay.
Okay,
I'll figure it out.
sorry. So I have the snapshot of the students, so my 8th graders that are going away. And then I have one kid that is at camp this year. He's a great builder, but he told me already that he is going to focus on soccer. So that's another open spot. I have another kid that didn't make it as a 6th grader because of his behavior, but made it last year. But he has been very disrespectful to the kids that are in his group for camp this year. And we've already had the conversation that he can turn in an application, but right now I don't see him making the team again because of his behavior. So as I go through that, I can start to look and see that if I kept my core team to reload, I really only have one open spot. So I have one kid that's a great programmer and a driver, one that's a good designer, and then 2 that are really great drivers. So whoever I recruit to reload that team probably should be a programmer because our programmer for that team is in 8th grade this year. So that's how I go through and look at rebuilding the team versus rebuilding. Rebuilding is hard because you don't know the students, a lot of the students. When you go through your tryouts and when you try to rebuild, you are starting from scratch and not knowing the dynamic of the kids. So I can look at
They're
what I
starting from
have.
scratch too.
Yeah.
They know nothing.
Yeah,
So
right.
it's
Yeah, so if I reload, I already know the dynamic of those students, those core students that are there, and I know what I'm looking for as a student to fit in the next slide.
Yeah, I think that last bullet point there, reloading allows you to set new goals each season based on your previous season. You can kind of keep climbing. Whereas rebuilding, you're starting fresh every year, so your goals are going to be pretty stagnant. Let's make it to state this year. Next year, rebuild. Let's make it to state this year. Whereas, you have that continuity throughout the years. And then it's really kind of cool to see, for me, I just do 4th and 5th graders. It's really neat to see those 4th graders become 5th graders, and now they're the new leaders of the team, and for them to come out of their shell a little bit, it's really awesome to see. Okay, so here's the selection process that I use. And again, these are just suggestions, right? You don't have to do it. This is not, these are just suggestions. So what I do at Woodview is the last week of August, I run a camp. The camp is free for any and all interested 4th and 5th graders at my school. So I think last year I had about 60 kids come to the camp. And the cool thing about the camp is, again, when you're whittling it down to a select few, the kids who don't eventually make the team, at least got to try out robotics. And that's, what our goal should be. But also, from the coach's perspective, it's kind of like a scouting opportunity for me. They're kind of like tryouts. And you tell that to the kids too. Like, I'm looking for kids to eventually make my team, so I want to see good behavior. I want to see good sportsmanship. I want to see collaboration. And so you can kind of view that camp as a tryout. Yeah.
You said it was in August.
Yeah.
Was it like a Saturday?
No, so I do it after school. So from 3:30 to 6:30 every day for a week, and then we finish the week with the tournament at the end. So, yeah, good question. I wanted to kind of start doing it during the summer, but it's hard with sports camps and the kids are busy. So I figured during the school year, no kids are busy, so let's get as many as we can. I think I had 60 kids come last year to the camp, and it was just myself. I'm going to need to recruit some help. It was really exhausting. I felt dead after that. But it's a good chance for you to check out. And the other cool thing about the camp, last year there were 2 girls that came to the camp that were completely off my radar. Like, I had no idea who those girls were, and they blew me away at the camp. If I didn't run the camp, they wouldn't have had a shot, I don't think, to make the team. And they both made the team because of that. So Just a really neat opportunity for kids, and it makes you as a coach feel a little bit better because you're not just saying no to kids. And then, yes?
What do you do at the camp?
So it's only 3 hours. I know, like, you guys run a camp, right? Is it, how
It's
long?
only 3.5 each night.
Okay, so we just we start off the first day doing like team building exercises, and then we go over the rules and the new game and all different strategy discussions, which we're gonna do later today. And then the next day they build the basic bot. Last year was a flex bot. What's it called? The shift plus clutch bot. And then that usually takes 1 day, maybe 2. Last year the flex bot only had, I think, like 60 steps with the instructions. I think the club I had like 120 or something like that. So, depending on, and the kids work at their own pace, right? So then, as you go on, if there's a couple days left and they're done with their robot, then they can start modifying and practice driving and getting on the fields and stuff. And then the last day we have a competition. So it's pretty basic, mainly because, yeah.
I'm going to be jumping ahead.
Sure.
Last year, my partner and I sort of did this. We had tryouts. We made our cuts, and then the principal forced us to take people. How do you get the principal on your...
You gotta talk to the principal before you do the cuts.
Well, it was... This should have been, an easy thing.
Sure, yeah, so...
She understood every part of what we were doing until parents started complaining.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about parents complaining. I've had a really, an awesome, unique relationship with my principal. We are really close. Unfortunately, he's retired this past year, so I'm terrified. It's actually weird. I was just telling him, I met with my new principal yesterday to talk about robotics, and it was not encouraging at all because she just didn't seem to understand the whatever. So this year might be a little different. We'll see, but yeah.
So communication is important.
Yeah.
Last year, I lost my coach, she retired, and I just had dads coming in to help. And moms started coming in to do all the crappy stuff, like make designs and things, and candy, and lockers, and that's fine. But when it came to like December last year, I went to the principal and said, I can't do this by myself because I can't expect the parents to come in and discipline the kids if I'm working with one team and, team C is off doing something crazy. I can't do all that. And he said, that's fine, just make sure you're communicating that. So when I started planning for camp in April, when we were having camp this week, every communication that I sent out said that just because you come to camp does not mean that you will make the team. You must come to tryouts, you must turn the application in on time. And I told the kids Monday, if you hand it to me late, you will watch me put it in recycle.
Yeah.
So I'm upfront with the kids, but I also have middle schoolers, so I can be a little bit more phased.
Did your principal say that because he or she was starting to get a bunch of complaints from parents?
She sent me the phone call and then told me that he was on the team.
Well, that's Stacy, I'm sorry. So, I guess that parent night, so I hold a parent night at the end of August, and then mid-September, I hold a parent night, actually 3 parent nights, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, different times, like 3:30 is Tuesday, 5 o'clock is Wednesday, Thursday is like 7, so that 0 parents can say we couldn't make it to the parent night. At that parent night, it's like 45 minutes, we basically just discuss what robotics is and the expectations that I have and the history of the Eagle Lots and whatnot, the new game. And then at the very end, I talk about if your kid doesn't make the team, it doesn't mean I don't like you as a parent or your kid. It doesn't mean that. In fact, in my application, I'll just flat out read what it says. I tell this to the parents. Like I said, I kind of felt bad putting this in the application. I don't want you to think that I'm a jerk. When I put it in anyway, I went through it with my wife and she said, I think it's okay. And so here's what it says. This is parents at the very bottom. Fine print, parents. As the coach, I have the ability to select team members based upon the above criteria. Because of the high demand but limited team space, your child may not be chosen despite being a perfect candidate or despite being on the team previously. Because that's where you start getting really sketchy when you have kids on the team and they go a whole season. You're like, hey, man, I can't have them again next year. You're not going to do that. And I'll tell you what, I did that twice this past year, and the parents were unbelievably supportive. They like, I get it. You understand who lived with this kid, lesson about overcoming adversity and things that don't go your way. Calling me or the school, this might be the part that's a little harsh. I said, calling me or the school to complain will not give your child a better chance of making the team. I've had in 3 years, I've had 0 parents call me or the principal to complain. So we've had it, we're keeping our fingers crossed, maybe the principal, so we'll see, but, yeah, you just have to make it clear that the parent, if you have a parent now, you have to make it very, very, very clear to them that I can't take it. I just can't, like, because it's just me, and I don't have enough time, enough resources, I can't take everybody. And better luck next year, and in middle school, and in high school.
Can you put that statement somewhere where we can get it?
This one.
To make it the whole application.
Yeah, we make the whole application by any chance?
Is there a reason you don't recommend to those parents, like, hey, we don't have room for you at the school? Buy a robot, buy a field, form a team outside of school, always an option.
I have not done that. I have said, I have talked about, I'm sure you're willing to buying kits and stuff, tinkering at your house, but I haven't said start your own team.
Oh, I'm losing some of my girls this year because they felt overlooked. With 45 kids, the handful of girls I had felt overlooked. So one of the moms has decided to do Girl Scout troops. They are forming 2 new Girl Scout troops, which actually benefits me because my daughter's in 4th grade. So they're going to have a 4th, 5th grade Girl Scout troop and a middle school Girl Scout troop so they can grow into the older group, which makes it easier too for me because I was going to have 8 retraining 8th graders, so I wasn't going to have a lot of open spots. And then I've asked if they will have their girls come in every once in a while and mentor our teams, and then I will go and help them on their practice nights, as long as they don't have practice the same night we do. So even though they're separate from our teams, we can work together, and they found a solution that works better for those girls that are a little quieter.
Yeah, and I do like that. I like saying, like, that's a good thing to say, because I think if you tell that to parents, they're gonna be like, no, never mind, I'm not gonna do that. So that's good, I'm gonna lock that in back
So,
here. Yeah.
so 2 points real quick. On the Girl Scout part, I have a wife who's a troop leader for 2 different troops. I'm relatively certain that there is a robotics badge that goes along with that. So that it's also an incentive to start your own team if you want to, if you want to go that far.
Apparently, I don't know anything about Girl Scouts, this is the first year for my daughter.
No, it's okay.
But apparently they had to form brand new troops. If they want to do VEX for Girl Scouts, they have to have a whole new troop. So that between those 2 moms, they're gonna have 3 different troops that they have to manage now.
And then the second point is that on the principal point of how do you, or parent point about how do you cut kids. So when we had this issue cut up at our school, our principal basically said, listen, if you want to do that, that's fine, but you have to have an objective measure for how you were able to eliminate kids. So what we did is we developed a recruitment metric that basically said that they were assigned so many points for behaviors they demonstrated at our robotics camp to say, like, if you really want to know, like, why we were measuring this, we have a metric for that was objective.
Yeah, she's gonna talk about that, hopefully, too.
Okay, so this is just a snapshot of some of the bits from last year. I give the application, the tape that it has to be turned in by, so those kids all turn in their application. Then this teacher evaluation form is also on the Google Drive that you guys can all access. That is out of 100 points. So you can see as I go through, like, this kid never had an application turned in, or a teacher evaluation form. I had whatever last year's STEM presentation was about. They all started to run together for me. They had to have a response back on, so it was a short answer, so that kid didn't do that. And then you can see that the other things that they turned in from the different stations during our tryouts. So camp is one thing for me, tryouts is a whole other thing. And so these were just different stations we did. And like Jake said, when it comes down to it, I'm looking for kids that can communicate with each other and cooperate, be respectful. I know that if they're in the parts room and I'm out in the main library, that they're not going to throw parts at each other or break parts. Everything else we can teach them. We can teach them about the design process and building and how the game is played. But I need to know that we can communicate and be respectful first. So as they rotate through the stations, my 8th graders lead the stations, and then I can simply rotate through 2, and I can see that teamwork aspect throughout. So I just pick things that were important for robotics, like design and engineering, and then I just kept a spreadsheet of everything that they did, that they turned in, and then I made a decision on if they made it based off of those different things. So there were 6 total items last year, I think, and so there was some that only turned in 4 of those pieces or participated in 4 of those stations. And this is, when a parent calls me and says, well, why didn't I get it? I have this right here, this data is right there that I can provide for them.
Yeah, so going back to at that parent night, where we talk about the expectations and whatnot, at the very end of the parent night, the kids pick up an application. And the application that I made 3 years ago, I purposely made it pretty intensive, 6 pages long, because if a kid is not willing to fill out a 6-page application, put in the effort to do that, they're probably not going to be willing to put in the effort to do a 9-month season. And so there's another middling process, right? And so we had like 60 kids at the camp. I think we had 55 come to parent night. And by the way, the camp, that might be the very first middling process. Kids might come to that and realize this is not something that I'm interested in. Whereas if you accept everybody, you're a week or 2 into your season and the kid realizes that they don't want to be a part of robotics, and 2 things happen. 1 of 2 things happen, and both of them screw your program. The first one is they quit, and so you have to kind of do some rearranging with the team. Or the second thing is they don't quit, and they just mess around the whole time, right? So this camp kind of gives everybody the opportunity to see whether they like it or not, and then they can come back to the parent night. So at parent night, we had like 55 kids. Take the application home when you're done, 6 pages long. You have 2 weeks to fill it out, turn it into me. And I also required a recommendation letter from someone in the community. It can't be a family member, obviously, it can't be your mom. Oh, and by the way, I think this goes without saying, and I feel like I say this every year, but at the parent night, but the kids have to fill out the application. I had one mom, she was just notorious for being that helicopter mom, filled out the application. Just a beautiful pink pen, flowy handwriting, and I knew her son did not have handwriting like that. Really good application. Really, really good application. I almost called her and said, congratulations, you were on the team. Tell your son, sorry, he's not, but you are. The kids have to fill it out. Obviously, that's obvious. So from there, I think I had like 44, 45 applications. I was hoping it would be a lot less because I had to get it down to like 14 kids. Because I run 2 teams. And so, and 14 for 2 teams is still quite a bit. I think they recommend like 3 to 5 per team, and I was trying to go for 7 per team, so that I could take as many as I possibly could handle. From there, I took the weekend to look through the applications, and it's pretty easy to tell who's serious about it and who's not, and I was able to get it down to like 25, and then from there I just got teacher input. Just shot an email to the teachers and said, what can you tell me about so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so? I'm looking for respect, I'm looking for maturity, leadership, collaboration ability, I'm looking for good behavior, whatever.
You can find a copy of the teacher evaluation form on the Google Drive, the one I've used for the last few years, if you were to do something like that.
So that was really the final whittling process, is the teachers were able to kind of pin it on the teachers a little bit. The parent asks, he'd say, Mr. Hofstetter said that they wouldn't be a good fit, I'm sorry, so. No, don't do that, but from there, I was able to get it down to 16 kids, and I was like, oh man, I just don't know who to cut from here. And so I just took 16, I did 2 teams of 8, which is way too many, but it worked out for us. And the reason it worked out for us is because we created sub-teams. Every kid had a role and a responsibility. And we're gonna talk about that in a little bit.
So for your camp, running a camp for 60 kids,
Yeah.
how many kits and game boards or game fields or things did
You can get the classroom bundle. It's pretty expensive. It's like $4,000 or something for 12 kids. And I know that's the biggest barrier is money. My principal was a tightwad, so we had saved a ton of money over the years. And as he was retiring, it was like, whatever you want. I want 12 kids, I want 3 fields, I want. So that's the hard part. George is gonna talk about fundraising a little bit, raise some money. Yeah, there's the resources part, right? You gotta evaluate your resources.
When I do drafts, I don't, I'll have a bunch out there and I'll have something for them to do with it. But I do different stations, so.
Yeah.
Yes, well, and we've had 5 years invested in ours.
Right,
so,
right. I don't know what you guys do as far as like charging kids. We don't charge it for free. Make sure it's for free. So if you want to do that away, I would say that. There you go.
But that also goes towards, as long as I write it the right way for the treasurer, I can put in there, this covers the individual kids' competition. So I look at how many competitions are we going to go to, what is that breakdown per student, how often am I going to order pizza for the students, their t-shirt cost is in there. So I just have to write it out, this covers competitions, pizza, t-shirts, random stuff you want to put in there, and then you can lump and say $75.
Yeah, George is gonna get into all that fundraising and raising. Team expectation.
All right, I tell the kids up front, there's a contract, they must come to the meetings consistently. We have a girl that was an 8th grader last year, she was on volleyball. So we had it worked out, it was not a game day. She came to the first part of robotics and then she would leave and go to practice. Same thing with my cross-country runners, track, tennis, swimmers. The swimmers would come to all but the last half hour, but then they would generally stay in the library and eat food and go on swimming. But they know that they have to come on a consistent basis and they have to have that conversation with me. I'm not going to look at the track schedule. I'm not going to look at the cross-country schedule. That's on them. That's their job.
Do you have a definition that you share with the kids as to what consistent basis means?
It should be on the contract.
I think George would say 80%.
Yeah, I think that's what. I don't like this video. I zoomed it in. I'm gonna stop touching that one.
I make 80%, but I also do have the same expectation for parents or volunteers or anyone that wants to help. They need to be there 80%. And it needs to be 80% in the beginning part of the season versus 3-4 weeks in when you've already done so many things and they want to.
The contract would be here.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I do 80%, and then same thing with grades. I consistently check their grades, and last year I don't think that some of the kids really understood that I did that until I pulled a kid into my office and I talked to him about it. So after that, he said, "Hey, I'm going to do a makeup for this quiz. I'll bring it and show it to you after I do it." And so we got this grade out. And it's not that I told him he was off the team. We had a couple, I think we had 3 boys last year that were in algebra 2. So I just said, "Hey, go help paint now real quick, see if he has any questions on his math so that he's prepared for his quiz." And that was George's suggestion last year. I'm like, "Oh, I love it." So I do have a table that I kind of send to work at if they need help. So all year long that I didn't have to look up his grades anymore. He came to me, reported to me, and was so excited that he was able to keep his grade up after that first quiz because he knew that first time he checked.
In that folder under building your team, there's a folder called contracts, and I just opened it up. These are great bullet points right here.
I haven't even looked at this to update it for this season, so it makes me exciting. I think this is
I'll help clean up after every meeting. I would just say, like, I have had that conversation with coaches where I've stopped by a practice and kids just kind of come in when they want and leave when they want, and I'm like, no, we gotta tighten this ship up. Like, if practice at 4, they're there at 4. If you're done at 5:30, they're there until 5:30. And the parents want to pick them up early, they need to wait outside until it's 5:30 when our practice is done. It's just it's a sign of respect for the other kids. So, anyway.
And on sportsmanship, I talk to parents a lot. the kid that I told you that hasn't been very friendly to the fourth graders. And for camp, I have 4th through 8th graders, so students that I won't even have. And then I also combine our 2 middle schools, so I have my East kids and some of the kids from our West building to help out their coach. And so there's probably only 30 of the kids that are at camp this year that will even be in my building. I'm only keeping 30 kids. So we have that conversation. I call parents, I email parents to let them know if I see an issue with sportsmanship or, oh my gosh, the parts, the issues with cleaning up, and just reminding them that I'm not going to release your kid from practice until everything's cleaned up. So we go over that, and I run a pretty tight ship. We also have kids that the first time that they drive a robot, they'll be like, I can't be a driver, this is not for me, and they want to sit off to the side and pout because they couldn't succeed the first time. So that's why we're going to keep a practice lot this year, so I can send kids in just to keep practicing driving. And that's, it's each year I find new things that I want to add and just redefine what works. So the practice lot will be something new this year for us. Practice for transportation, we purposely have robotics practices on Tuesdays because my daughter has dance. So I tell them I have to leave at this time because I have other obligations. And I haven't really had an issue. After the second time somebody is late being picked up, I tell them the next event, I'm sorry, your kid can't be on the team because I have to go and be a mom now. And so, after that conversation, it doesn't happen again. And competition, they have to provide transportation competitions.
So once you've whittled your team down,
Okay.
You guys can lead into my next presentation because I took up at least 7 minutes of yours.
That's all right. So once you have kind of completed your selection process, you need to create sub-teams within your team. I think this is something George talks about in the beginning of the year, coach training or whatever. But it's so true because just like, and I put it here, just like any team or family or church or job, everyone has to have their own role. And then here's the important part. They have to buy into that role. You can't have 11 quarterbacks on your football team. You can't have 400 pastors at your church. You can't have 7 dads in your family. It just doesn't work that way, right? So everybody has to have their own specific role, and then they need to buy into that. I was talking to Adam a little bit, like right before this started, and it's like, Tom Brady doesn't desire to be an offensive lineman and then, one week and then the next week desire to be the running back. Like, he is the quarterback and he's going to stay the quarterback. He buys into it, just like the offensive lineman buys
Another team
it.
that you can use as a football example.
What's that? Yeah, I know. With Patriots,
I have a love-hate relationship with the Patriots.
I'll try to think of something. Andrew Love. Sorry, we're going to get that. So here's how I do how I do my sub-teams here. Obviously, you break your season up into build season and competition season. And if you're not familiar with what that is, at least the way I run my program, the build season is pretty much the entire season that you're part of the season that you're not competing, right? So the competition season, you lead into the competition season. Maybe like a week or two before you go to competition, that's when they jump into those sub-teams. I know other organizations do it a little bit differently, like they say build season until December, and then after Christmas break is the competition season, but you might have a competition in November. So that's kind of the breakup there. I have 2 kids. Again, keep in mind, this is designed for a team with 8 kids, which is a lot, but it worked. Build design team, I have 2 kids that are building and designing the robot. A supply manager, what was the term you used for that? Is it gopher? The gopher, the kid that he just does everything yet. He maybe doesn't have a ton of strengths in the other areas, so he helps out with everything else. I have 2 kids on the documentation team. You can easily make that 1. They're in charge of the engineering notebook. This is one that's really, really difficult for kids to buy into, right? Writing and writing and writing and writing and writing, and a little little bit of sketching and taking pictures, but I pulled these two girls aside that just so happened to be in my classroom as well, my 5th grade class. And I just pulled them aside, like, I really don't want to do this. You guys are incredible writers. You guys are awesome writers. Please, like, consider doing this. And they treated this thing like it was their baby. I'm not kidding you. Like, any moment they had downtime in class, they just finished a math test, they had 10 minutes, 15 minutes, they would grab the notebook and they would just get into it. So, they got to the point where they were so, like, they loved it so much that they just started drawing parts and labeling parts, and they're like the 2x color. You don't have to do that. Look at that, that's not important. But and I think the judges like it too. So anyway, that's the important part. They have to buy into their sub-team. And we'll get into this notebook a lot later when we talk about the awards, the design award and whatnot. But yeah, so actually a cool story about that, and Steve can attest to this. We were at a competition, the judges were convinced that I didn't know, as if I have all the time in the world. And it was cool because that's your chance for the kids to defend themselves, right? And so that's why they had the successes that they had this past year, so they were able to talk about and prove that they did this. In fact, one of the girls' name is Tatiana. She's like, "Have you seen my teacher draw before?" Seeing his handwriting? That's really not my handwriting. So anyway, we'll talk about this a lot more in depth later on, but sub-teams are really important. What's the other documentation? Oh, I have an awards team as well, and basically what they do is they just dive into all the awards, all the possible awards that you can win in a competition, at a regional competition, or at state, or at Worlds, figure out basically how to win them, and then they present that to the team, and then we kind of set our goals based on that. And they're also the ones that spend most of the time in the STEM research project if you end up doing that. We're going to get into all the awards later on, like towards the very end of today. So, and then I have a PR team, one kid who writes the thank you notes to sponsors, they write the thank you notes to hosts of events that we attend, they create like the sponsor flyers and things like that. And they don't have a ton of responsibilities, so they oftentimes jump into the awards team as well. Yeah.
Your team's not doing the programming?
Yeah, so my drivers are usually my programmers as well, my build design team. Yeah. My build design team usually jumps into drivers because they're the ones that build the robot inside and out. So they're also the ones that program as well. So competition season drivers / programmers. And I know some teams have like, you know, their programmers are not their drivers at all, just give another kid a chance to go to the skills field and whatnot. That's totally fine. Typically, what I've seen is my drivers are the ones that are the most in tune with the robot and the programming and whatnot. The competition manager, very important job. They're basically my assistant coach at a competition. They're in charge of everything, so that I can just sit back and enjoy. Scout team, they, the couple weeks leading up to a competition, they go to the robot events site and they see what teams are going to be attending that competition. They click on all the teams and just kind of see what they've accomplished this season and last season. You can check out all the information on every team, just so that we know who we're going up against and what we're going to be working with. And we reference that sheet when we get to a competition. We get our match list. We can see we're with this team, this team, this team, and this team, and that's just really helpful. And they're also the kids at a competition. They go seek out who our matches or who our alliances are, just kind of scout and get back the information to us. Scorekeeper is really important. They watch the match really intently, and we have this thing, and I'll show you later again, just a scoring sheet, because we want to know, like, how many points are we scoring in a match, and how many points is our alliance scoring in a match. If we're scoring 4 points and our alliance is scoring 54 points, clearly there's some things that we need to improve and work on, and it's just really valuable information. And then the pit crew, obviously we have the pit crew. Before and after every single match, they need to be checking that robot inside and out to make sure even just the connector pins are in, that your wheels are not wobbling, things like that. So they have a checklist that they check before every match of things that they feel like are important to go through. Batteries. Daily practice routine, probably one of the most asked questions that we get. What do you do during practice? Like, how do you have all this time? Or like, how often do you practice? Well, I practice twice a week. Tuesdays and Thursdays for an hour and a half each practice. which doesn't seem like a ton of times. We're kind of in a unique situation at my school. As a teacher, I hate this. As a robotics coach, I love it. Our dismissal is staggered. And so first bell rings like 3:05, second bell is like 3:12, third bell is like 3:20. That is just a waste of time as a teacher, right? You can't, there's no instruction going on during that time. It's just like, we can play silent ball. We can work on homework or whatever. As a robotics coach, I love it because my robotics kids coming from different classes throughout the school can leave at that first bell and go to the robotics room. I'm not in there. So like she mentioned earlier, I have to be able to trust these kids to be working independently, I guess, collaboratively in that robotics room without me. And so what I just have them do for the first 10 to 15 minutes when I'm not in there, and you're gonna think this is kind of weird, but I just literally, every single practice they did this for an entire school year, the first 10 to 15 minutes, they just memorized the pieces, these things. What is this? What is this? What is that? What is that? And they would quiz each other. There's two reasons that we did that. The first reason, the judges at competitions really like it that you can talk about omnidirectional wheels and 2x beams and specialty beams and shaft collars as opposed to thingamabobs and thingamajigs, and we put that right next to, so it helps them communicate a little bit better. The judges are a lot more impressed. And the other reason is because if you know what the parts are and you know what they do, then it's going to make it that much easier to build your robot. So that's how we start off our practices. When I'm not even in there, they also like to eat snacks and stuff. So once I come in, they know to have a seat at their seats, and we just kind of talk about what that practice is going to be about. Information, it's like 5 to 10 minutes. Maybe upcoming competition information, updated rankings, things like that. And then I have all of the sub-team objectives, all the tasks that they're supposed to be working on written on the board. As soon as I release them, they just get started on those tasks. This sub-point right here, this bullet point here is really important. Once their task is complete within their own sub-team, they know, and this is something that we talk about, they know that they need to then jump into another sub-team and help them out with their task. Or they need to move on to something new, because I don't want any downtime. An hour and a half, twice a week, is not a lot of time, so we don't have time to be wasting sitting. You know what happens when there's downtime, right? Like, we all have it, right? There's no downtime. As soon as you are done, you're working with another sub-team, or you're working on your next task. I think this bullet point is really important too. Anytime there's a major breakthrough or a necessary discussion point, you've got to stop everybody. You got to remember, you're all on a big team. And I have two separate teams working in one classroom. It is so okay to work collaboratively within those two teams. Because this team might have a really neat idea. They just came up with this really cool design that sucks up the orange balls and a lot easier than the other team, and make them work collaboratively. We're going to stop everybody, even the awards team who wants nothing to do with the robot. We're going to stop them so that everybody's on the same page. Because what ends up happening, there's many reasons why we do that, but when you're being asked questions by judges, sometimes they'll just ask, like they'll say, hey, you, tell me about how you came up with the intake system on your robot. And that girl's like, if she wasn't a part of the whole group discussion, she'd be like, I have no idea, I'm just the awards team, right? But if you have everybody working collaboratively and you're stopping during these major breakthroughs or these discussion points, and that happened to us at Worlds last year. This girl, Lily, on my team was just getting grilled by the judges. She was just on the awards team and didn't touch the robot, but I was blown away because she, even though she wasn't a part of the building design team, she was able to talk about the building design because of all these stuff. And then at the very end of the practice, we just debrief. I let the sub-teams talk about what they accomplished during that practice, and then we talk about what we're doing in the next practice.
So practice versus competition bot, this will be the first year that I'm going to do this. So this clutch bot that's up here, I'm going to leave together, and then tonight before we dismantle from camp, I'm going to go around and look to see who hasn't modified their clutch all that much, so that we can have a couple extra models available for just drivers to go in and practice driving. So if you're not building or redesigning our competition bot, I'm sending you in just for drive. And this gives them a chance to look at this model, what they don't like about it, make suggestions to the designers and the builders for the new bot, and to also get incoming sixth graders that have never been on a team that practice and experience with strategy. And then also have it so that they can practice programming too. Because I would like, last year was the first year that my goal was every single team was going to have a program. I didn't care if your robot only drove forwards and you could hang. Every team, I did that last year. But I have parents that come and help with that, and past students. So one of my former programmers, he's a junior this year, and he's at camp this year teaching programming for those kids.
So we don't have a very big, we don't have a very big team. We don't have a lot of extra parts to make extra robots. So what we did last year, some kids are just, they've done things so they can drive and others don't. So we just brought a couple remote control cars in, and somebody had a drone, and we sent the kids out the hallway to just drive the cars and fly the drone, because the controls are not unlike what you do with this. So we didn't have the opportunity to build an extra robot and drive it, but we considered driving practice, and it did make a big difference.
I like that idea for teams that don't have a lot of parts. We've got 5 years into our program, and once we started hosting and we actually had an influx of money, I can have the extra supplies on hand. So that's why I've got, I think I'm up to 9 frames and controllers at this point for 6 teams. So it gives me that little more flexibility. But if you don't have that flexibility, that's awesome.
So one of the things that we did, at least starting off through, especially kind of the initial phase of going through kind of the building process, but it helps out as well as, you know, especially if you're kind of struggling with parts, is we set up, we took a segment of the hallway and actually set up the board as in, like, you know, outside balls and stuff like that, and then let the kids, okay, look, you're the robot, you're standing here, you have a minute, figure out how you're going to get, and they seen how hard, you know, because we made it scale size, right? They went through, they had to go through, and actually they are the bot, and they're going through and kind of working it through. And that way, you know, it gets, yeah, this was really hard, you know, and it started seeding some of the ideas that you go through, and okay, how can I go through, right? Do I build a scoop? Do I build a shovel, right? Whatever, right?
They don't realize how quick 1 minute goes. And so when you're going through the design process, kids are like, you know, we're gonna get 170 max points in this package, and this, and this. So that's cool, that's cool.
Sorry, this is more of a detail thing, but my kids noticed, because this will be our 3rd year doing it, and the parts from the kit to do the competition kit, can we use those as parts on their robot?
Yeah, there's a list.
Somewhere that's.
Okay.
You can basically use anything that looks like VEX, and even at Target, you can buy X-Bug parts. Everything from there you can use, except for like some of the motors and electrical things from the X-Bug stuff. But pretty much anything in your kit that looks like a VEX, you know, snap tag type of thing, you can use.
I think everything from next level, last year's game, you can use except for the hanging bar.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Well,
it's like yeah. Oh well, yeah. Yeah. So anyways.
I want to mention about the practice bot. There are some teams that take that very seriously. You'll see at competitions and things where they'll have a practice bot where they will be practicing with the teams on, and then they'll have their competition bot. And that's okay to do, but you got to keep in mind you're only allowed to have one robot for the tournament. Okay, you would not be allowed to take your quote practice bot and stick it out on the field and compete with it. If it's the robot that goes through inspection, that's what then you know, has to be out on the field for the matches type of thing. If when you're practicing with other teams, you want to use a different robot, that's fine. Just keep that in mind. You only have one official robot at the tournament.
Yep. That'd be called cheating.
So we're talking about this a little bit for the Girl Power Grant. As long as you're a new team, so when you go into your account and you register your teams, it has to be a new team name. So like 20048 or whatever would be a new team for me. And that would be consistent with at least 50%, right? And then this week we had our what we call flash orientation, where our students come in and make a their schedules, put their supplies in their lockers and things like that. I kept the gym doors open and just let parents come in and see camp and ask me questions. And I had probably 5 girls just last night that I had applications in the gym with me, and I had them in the cafeteria where they're picking up their schedules. I printed off 150 applications. They're all gone. I'm a little freaked out because I'm only keeping 3 kids. But that's just something. I know. So do what you can to have those conversations with the students and parents and really encourage those girls, because I have lost a lot of girls with the Girl Scout teams. And in this video, this girl will be a sophomore this year, I think. She's super sweet. Okay, if you log in, this is going to try. It is in Florida. Where it says dare to be different. This is from like just a really long.
I chose to be on robotics because on my first year at East, I was looking for something to do, and robotics just spoke out to me because I wanted to be an engineer. And I still do, and I felt like if I did join that, then it would help me with my skills. But it also did teach me a lot of skills, not only robotics building, but teamwork, cooperation, and just communicating with people. It's really helpful with other skills too. Having an all-girls team just shows that girls can do something and they can do it all by themselves, and they don't need boys to help them, because I know that the majority of robotics is boys, and without having that girls team, girls just seem very insignificant and they don't really seem to help a lot. They're people who can actually build a robot and do something that maybe boys can't even do.
So that was the only year where I had an all-girls team. I loved my girls, but I hated them all on the same team. So I like that the girl power grid, you just need to have 50% of them on the team, because the boys will balance out their drama.
Okay, that's all we have.
No, you're fine, I can't.
If you have more questions about that,